In the middle of the 19th century, communication entrepreneurs rushed to stretch telegraph wires from coast to coast. The idea that an idea could travel across the country in a matter of seconds rather than several months wasn't just revolutionary, it was lucrative. If a manufacturer or business owner could get the lead on his competitors by even a few weeks, he could win. And of course, there were military applications as well. But as with all technologies, there were naysayers. Henry David Thoreau wrote this: "We are in great haste to construct a magnetic telegraph from Maine to Texas, but Maine and Texas, it may be, have nothing important to communicate. We are eager to tunnel under the Atlantic and bring the old world some weeks nearer to the new, but perchance the first news that will leak through into the broad flapping American ear will be that Princess Adelaide has the whooping cough." Well, over a century later, Neil Postman reflected that Thoreau turned out to be right. The telegraph allowed people to telescope their attention. They cared for matters the world over simply because they could hear about those matters through the telegraph. Postman argues that what technology allows us to give our attention unto becomes the thing unto which we pay our attention. I know that's obvious, but it's not always obvious how much of our own lives are shaped similarly. For example, let's take the near ubiquitous example of online influencers. Individuals who use close shots and selfie videos to give their audience the impression that they're close friends, as though they have access to their intimate thoughts in the influencer's life. 20 years ago, someone might have assumed that a random person's favorite lip gloss or pre-workout or hunting loadout would be of no interest to anyone else. Well, except for those people who actually knew them personally, and even then it might be boring to them. But if you made that bet, you would have lost. In the same way telegraphs can make non-Englishmen care about English princesses, well, Reels, Shorts, and TikToks have made it possible for billions of non-influencers to care about the remarkably boring quotidian details of another person's life. Of course, these others do have some notable features. They're often more attractive than normal people, more wealthy than normal people, and more charming than normal people. They've managed to become famous for being famous. And again, maybe none of this is harmful. Does it really matter if you spend more time engaging with a pair of influencers in New York City than you do with your coworker? Maybe, maybe not. But where the real harm comes into play is with teenagers and preteens using smartphones. In his latest book, The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt calls social media platforms the most efficient conformity engines that have ever been invented. They can shape an adolescent's mental models of acceptable behavior in a matter of hours, whereas parents can struggle unsuccessfully for years to get their children to sit up straight or stop whining. Parents are often no match for the socializing power of social media. This isn't just Jonathan Haidt's opinion. It's rooted in research. Haidt, who is a behavioral psychologist at New York University, he explains that both preteens and teens are biologically designed to pay attention to the behavior of others and to emulate it. In particular, they're designed to, quote, detect prestige and then copy the prestigious. This makes them stand apart from other primates who tend to organize themselves in hierarchies based on physical dominance. No, humans care about social characteristics. Haidt writes this: but humans have an alternative ranking system based on prestige, which is willingly conferred by people to those they see as having achieved excellence in a valued domain of activity, such as hunting or storytelling back in ancient times. People can perceive excellence for themselves, but it's more efficient to rely on the judgments of others. That means that if everyone in the village says that John is the best horseman, you'll likely look up to John as a horseman, whether or not you've ever seen him ride a horse. This is part of why celebrity culture in general is so addicting. The idea of a prestigious person who is known and valued by a whole society gives that person an aura. The larger their audience, the greater the effect. If you see them, you're starstruck because you were designed to be. It's biology. But unlike adults, teens and preteens don't always have the ability to differentiate between who is prestigious for right or wrong, for good or ill reasons. 200 years ago, no one had to worry about a teen emulating a bad person 200 miles away. They were far more likely to emulate the citizens most approved of. Though, of course, criminals always have had their own sort of prestige. In the social media era, everything has changed. Haidt writes this, quote, platform designers in Silicon Valley directly targeted this psychological system when they quantified and displayed the success of every post, likes, shares, retweets, comments, and every user whose followers are literally called followers. The difference is stark. It might take you a few days or weeks to figure out who the prestigious people are in a village, and that's accomplished mostly by observation. But on social media, you can quantify prestige at a glance. Look at followers, likes, shares, and views. Now, this actually hijacks preteens and teens from forming their own judgments because they're still in the process of developing their ability to determine who is and isn't worthy of emulation. Social media makes it extraordinarily easy. And the people it offers to them as examples are rarely famous for any useful traits that serve society. Instead, they're famous for their physical appearance, for their cutting sense of humor, their wealth, their sense of style, or some other noxious measure of value. Postman calls his era the peekaboo world because it was always jumping out and stealing our attention from one triviality to the next, making us all less serious, less civic, and less intelligent in the process. But now we've given peekaboo machines to our children, and they don't just steal attention, they offer role models and train teens to care about shallow things that won't make their lives any richer. Paul warns us that bad company corrupts good character. Well, big tech has learned how to monetize this principle and poison our children in the process.